you some updates about what our leadership team is thinking, where Dwell Church is headed. But first, let me say, if you are new to Dwell Church Gathering, would love for you to click that QR code right there in front of you. And also grab one of our pint glasses. We got a pin and a sticker, all kinds of goodies after the service. But make sure that you connect with Dwell Church. You've already done a very bold thing by visiting a 36-week-old church plant. So go ahead and take another bold step and stay connected with us. Now, over the summer, you might remember, if you were here over the summer, we were working on something we called a sustainability campaign. Dwell Church is a church doing a church plant the hardest way you can possibly do it. We don't have a church plant network. We don't have a denomination. That's because there's really nothing like Dwell Church. This is kind of one of one. And even here in San Mateo County, Deep Blue County, there is not a church that is like Dwell Church. Contemporary, affirming, very generous relationship to science, all of our core values, which we'll go through here in a moment. And because Dwell Church is so unique, there is not a natural home for us. And that means all of the things required to plant a church, we are building ourselves. And that means a couple of things. I'll explain in a bit. There was a grant given to us to get started, and that was an amazing gift. And the first phase of that grant was designed for one person to have a year-long salary to do all of the groundwork to plant a church. Instead, we just went for it. We just planted this thing. And we did that because we felt like our leadership team was amazing. There was an amazing staff being assembled, and amazing people started saying yes to the vision of Dwell Church. So we just went ahead and went for it. This fall, we'll receive the second half of this grant. Our leadership team has been thinking about what we will do with it. And we'll talk through that some next week. But for now, we're working on Sustainability 2.0. Here's the reason I give you all of that background. We have essentially 1 year for Dwell Church to arrive at this level of sustainability. Now, we have come a really long ways, as you will see, but we are on a mission to make sure Dwell Church exists out of the gate on a sustainable footing so we can build something that we think people will say, gosh, I don't fully understand what they're doing there, but I have to check it out because of the way they talk about the God that they know. Because they have those core values that resonate so deeply with me. And as we've been saying, we're working with sort of the nomenclature. Are we planting the church and Jesus is building it? Did Jesus plant it and we're building it? Whatever it is this powerful partnership that we're experiencing together. And even though we know that Jesus has been the one that set the go button, press play, we also know that no one else will build Dwell Church except for us. If we don't build it, no one is going to. So if we want to see a church like this in the world, we're going to have to do the hard work. And what's amazing about it is so many people have risen their hand and said, I will do that work. So many people. One of the most encouraging things I've ever witnessed in my life is people saying, yeah, I would love to help build something like that. So building the sustainable foundation of Dwell Church, here are a few updates we're working through. It's been an amazing 252 days since February 25th when we launched this sucker. We've done so many things that are amazing, part of a first-year church plant. We did some community outreach last week. Trunk or Treat was so much fun. Way more people showed up than we thought were going to. That was totally delightful. We've had way more kids show up to Dwell Church than we ever imagined that we would. And we had a great fundraiser, the barn raising. You can find the whole thing online, where we had 3 people that we know from across the nation help us think about what does the future church look like. And through that kind of lovely dinner, we raised $14,000 for our Dwell Kids budget. That's pretty amazing. In fact, people call me all the time who are on the grant delivery side, and they're like, have you guys been able to do anything yet? And I'm like, yeah, we did all these. We pretty much have this church going. And they're like, that is incredible. In fact, yes, that's right. That's right. So amazing. Now, as you see in a moment, people have contacted us from all across the country to say, I wish there was a church like that in my town. That is what I've always dreamed of. So we have people supporting Dwell from all across the country. It's really pretty incredible. And our dream is to help eventually other people do what we are doing. That if you think Dwell Church needs to exist, you maybe think Dwell Church needs to exist in every town. There is a dream that we have to embody the church of the future, that we're called by the Holy Spirit to start dreaming about what does the future church look like. Maybe it looks something like this. That's why we have said, yes, we will try to build it. We don't know what it looks like. We're going to try. Okay, amazing little bit there. Here are some of the background of why we're launching Dwell Church. A lot of us have been to other churches. I've worked for other churches in the Bay Area. I loved them. I have loved the churches that I've gotten to serve. But over the course of my duration of serving them, I've realized the door was not wide enough. Let's build a church where the door is so wide that any person could come to Dwell Church and feel like I felt seen there in my time there. We also know there's what they call an epidemic of loneliness. And then finally, all kinds of social critics and thinkers are telling us everyone alive today is going to undergo an unprecedented amount of change. So because the playing field looks like this, we have felt called to build Dwell Church. The purpose that we are wrestling with is to be a new church for a new era, that we're called to live into a new era. We know the world is changing, and what will the gathering of the followers of Jesus look like on the other side of all this change? Well, we think it might look like Jesus-centered, research-based, trauma-informed, diverse, affirming, and inclusive. By Jesus-centered, we mean a personal experience of Jesus, a personal friendship with him. Research-based, a new, more vital partnership with science. Trauma-informed, psychology integrated into our discipleship, into our internal formation. Diversity, we know inherently, just reading the Bible, the kingdom is diverse. Affirming and inclusive. An affirming Bible reading is a better Bible reading, is our argument. That's what the core values might look like. And we're thinking, we don't know what a church looks like built on those core values, but we're going to find out by building one. But we also think it's helpful to think about, what does it feel like? What does the church of the future feel like when you become a part of it? It feels like we're encountering Jesus in satisfying ways. We're connecting deeply with each other. We're feeling seen. And we're deploying our volunteers, what we call builders. No one's just volunteering here. They're building something. We're deploying them in a way that is at the ceiling of their capacity, that nobody's just called to show up, do a little thing. Everyone is called to give their best gifts to this. We're figuring out how to do that. What does it feel like? This is what we think it feels like. Spiritual encounter, deep connection, greater purpose. I hope that's what you start feeling the longer that you spend time at Dwell Church. I dream of a church that delivers these things to the people that are a part of it. That's what we're working on here. Over the summer, here are the things that we did. We said we're going to double down on Dwell Kids. So we reformatted it. We recruited additional builders, and we've got 2 different environments. That was one of our goals. We doubled down on Dwell Dinners. Once a quarter, we're gathering in homes, getting to know each other. And we doubled down on story nights. It's one of the best things we do. Our next one is January 12th. If you're from like New York, come back January 12th. Story nights are incredible. And then we wanted to develop local partnerships with the San Mateo Pride Center, a local school here. And then we wanted to take all kinds of relationships to the next level. That was one of our goals, our previously standing relationships. We did all those things. Our sustainability campaign over the summer is we wanted to have 25 people praying every day for Dwell over the summer. We had 18, pretty good, not bad. We wanted to add 25 on average new people to our community. We nailed that one, feel good about it. As we'll see in a moment, our goal was to add $25,000 in monthly income to Dwell Church to have that be our budget. That pays for mostly our rent here, our staff, and then all of our other kind of month-to-month bills, and then also 2 gifts to our partners, $500 each to one of our strategic partners that we're developing. And of that $25,000, we're at about $14,000 a month. Now, when I talk to our 4 church plant coaches, they tell me that's the most incredible thing they have ever heard. No 252-day church plant has $14,000 a month coming in. So people stood up and said, Dwell Church is a place that I want to see in the world, and I will show up and build it. So we made very real progress in our sustainability campaign. Now we are working on 2.0. So here are the things that we are building now that we're going to double down on, and some of our goals over the next 3 months. First, we want to continue connecting with the neighborhoods that we have been located in, all within 1 mile here. We did a great job last week. Well over 100 people from this neighborhood came to Trunk or Treat. It was so much fun. We ran out of candy. 1 kid threw up. It was a great time. We're going to keep doing those kinds of things as the fall goes on. We're planning something for Christmas. We think connecting with these neighborhoods is going to be great. And actually, as we've studied the map, happy Holy Spirit accident, there aren't almost any other churches working in this particular neighborhood. In our old neighborhood, there was 5 churches there, and they're all doing great things. I know them all. They're amazing. That's wonderful. Those kinds of churches don't exist, as far as I could tell, in this neighborhood. Because when we thought that the school was going to be closed over Christmas break, we tried to reach out to them. Where else could we be? We couldn't find any churches located near here. So kind of amazing, and that's what they told us last week. Nobody's really doing these trunk or treat things or anything like it. So somehow God has called us here and provided this place for us to do his work here. Pretty amazing. We're going to continue building participatory systems and participatory services. That's a hallmark of Dwell Church. And we're going to continue developing our mission, our vision, and our strategy. Just organizational infrastructure so that we can feel like we know what we're doing, we know how we're spending our resources, we know how we're working together as teams. Those are the things we're going to build over the next 3 months. Sustainability 2.0, we're going to build builder teams. We've already been talking about that for several weeks. If you don't have a job at Dwell Church, you will soon. So we're coming for you. Go ahead and get signed up. We're hoping to make progress towards our $25,000 a month. Next week, we'll talk some about how we have bridged the gap for months that we don't have those $25,000, how we'll spend our grant and our fundraising efforts outside of this particular congregation. Those are all very robust, and we've given ourselves a really impressive, I think, for having zero network and zero denomination, a great runway to see what God is up to. But we want to make progress on these $25,000. We'll talk about that in a second. And then through the course of the next 4 weeks, I want to invite each one of you to develop a daily prayer practice, which we're going to talk about. So as part of our sustainability over the next 3 months, we're going to build teams, make progress towards our $25,000 a month, and have everybody who would like to develop a daily prayer practice. That's what we're working on. Now, a couple other things I want to talk about. Sometimes at church, they just sort of say blanketly, would you just give 10% of your income? And I always found that a little disempowering because I didn't know if that was making a difference. My income was typically very small. I didn't know how to do that. Some people have felt like, yes, they want to give 10% of their income a month to Dwell Church. That's been amazing. But we're trying to develop a new, more transparent strategy to develop entry points into giving where people could say, I can't give the maximum amount of that 10%, but I can give something. Will that make a difference? We want people to feel like absolutely yes. So we developed this band system here where we needed 2 people giving $3,000 a month, 5 people giving $1,500 a month, 8 people giving $750 a month, 15 people giving $300 a month, and 20 people giving $50 a month. I wish someone would have told me when I was in college, you could give $50 a month and it would really move the needle for your gathering, your church. So that's what we started with, and we started at 20 regular financial partners who are somewhere mapped onto here, but this was our goal last time when over the summer when we were working on our sustainability campaign. Here's where we are at now. The yellow columns are kind of mapping our goals versus where we are. Now, a lot of people from across the country wanted to give at $100 a month. That's pretty amazing, actually, for a church you don't even go to. So that wasn't on the original plan for each band, so we had to kind of map that in. But we moved from 20 monthly financial partners to 29. That's pretty amazing, actually. And then you can see, if you just kind of compare from the goal givers to the actual givers, that we made very real progress in each one of these columns. So if you're thinking, I can't give a ton, but I could give a little, gosh, you are going to help us move the needle here. Or maybe you're feeling like, this is my spiritual home. This is an amazing way to build Dwell Church. So we're going to keep talking about this over the next couple of months, or the next couple of weeks. But my dream for us is to feel like every single person got to do something that they felt called to build Dwell Church. That's my dream for y'all. So this doesn't always work to use the QR code, so make sure that you get on our email list. Phones don't work so hot in here, but I would love for everyone to think about doing one of these 3 things over the next month. I could join a Dwell Builder team, I could become a Dwell financial partner, or I could begin or continue a daily practice. When we started talking about giving at Dwell Church, we talked about it in 2 ways. That we wanted every person to be able to build Dwell Church. And we wrestled with the idea, is Jesus planting it and we're building it? Or are we building it, he's planting it? We have no idea how that works. We're partnering with the power of the resurrected Christ. We're working together to see what God might do here. And then we talked about it one other way at the very beginning. If each of us just gave our little bit, then we would ask Jesus to see what he could do with it. And I remember sitting in Lisa's backyard, giving that pitch. We're each just going to give our little bit. And some people who'd been a part of church plants before said, it doesn't work like that. Because sometimes one person has to do everything. And I was like, what if we really tried from the beginning to do it a really different way? Each person gave their little bit. So that's what I want to invite you to do. And as I was thinking about that, when we were back in Lisa's backyard, we always had bubbles. We had these bubble machines. We used them at Trunk or Treat. And sometimes they would run out of batteries, or they would get jammed, and we wouldn't be able to use them. And my 6-year-old son watched that, and he said, Dad, you know how the bubble machines don't always work? Well, I made you this. It's a bubble wand. And why don't you just bring that to Dwell Church, and anytime the bubble machines break, you just use this, Dad. I made it for Dwell Church. This is my 6-year-old son giving what he could to build Dwell. So all I'm asking of you is to give what you could, your little bit, and to see what God might do with it. That's what we're doing to build Dwell Church. So if you haven't yet, pull out your phone, either click this thing or take a picture of it, and then we'll move on. I'll give you 8 seconds to do that. My phone always makes the microphones buzz. Let's see if we can get it to work. All right, I'm just taking a picture. You do the same. I'll email it to you, and we'll keep building Dwell. Thanks all for those of you who have been a part of it so far. At the same time, we're moving into a new set of teachings over the next couple weeks. And this set of teachings comes out of what we call community discernment, where we sit around round tables and we work together to say, this is what we hope we talk about at Dwell Church. And each table gets to say, if I had 4 weeks where I could do anything at Dwell, I could pick the topic and the songs, or say no songs, or no sermon. If I could do anything, each table would say, this is what I would do. And it was so enlightening. And one of those topics was, we want to know more about love. What is love? Why are we bad at it? That was actually the driving question from that specific table. And so as a staff, we said that'd be great to talk about during the election. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about doing the hardest thing. And I think one of the hardest things for a human being to do is to give and to receive love. So we're going to be talking about what love is, why are we bad at giving and receiving it, but we also felt like something we are going to need to do during that election season is to remember how to love people that are so different from us, and then also remember how to anchor and root and found our lives on the loving presence of Jesus. Because whatever happens on Tuesday, there will be moments in our lives where everything is falling apart. That's part of what it means to be a human. And the great gift of the presence of Jesus is that we could anchor our lives in love in a way where we are less affected by those brutal things that might happen to us. So that's what we're working through. Let's talk about what is love. It is hard sometimes to imagine a great act of love. Oftentimes we are the recipients of small acts of love that accumulate over time in a way that make a great difference in our lives. But a single great act of love is hard to identify. When I was a sophomore in college, after church one day, all my friends and their parents, my parents ran around with the same 5 families. Everything we did, 5 families from our church. We would go get donuts every time. One particular day, I'd had some of those guys come spend the night at my house. So I pulled out all these old mattresses from our basement. And I remember my mom telling me, if you don't clean up those mattresses, you can't go get donuts after church. So what I did was not clean up those mattresses. Hope that she didn't notice. After church, she said, no donuts till you drive home and clean up those mattresses. So I did that. One of my buddies came with me. We cleaned them all up. Then we were driving to get donuts. I lived out in the countryside, outside of Kansas City, Missouri. And I looked left as I was turning on this country road, and then I looked right, and then 16-year-old self turned left into traffic. And man, I got T-boned catastrophically by this poor other fella driving a truck 65 miles an hour. I was driving my dad's car, and my first thought when I regained consciousness was, I have destroyed my father's car. And then the ambulance came. They put me on this backboard. The car was obliterated. The actual stereo flew out of the window down the street. My buddy was okay, but I was taken to the hospital. I was all beat up, cut up. And I remember my parents coming in, and they were sort of hovering over me, strapped to this backboard, and they had nothing to say. They didn't know what to say. Who knows what to say? So I said, I'm so sorry. And my dad, who, if you were here at Trunk or Treat, was dressed like Iron Man. I said, I'm so sorry, Dad. And he said, I love you. That's what he said to me. And I sometimes think about what my dad in that moment, would he have switched places with me? 1,000,000% he would have switched places with me. Occasionally, in specific moments in your lives, you get to see a powerful act of love. And right at the heart of our faith is a powerful act of love. The Christian story is that God became a human being to walk with us, and he did that so he could connect with us. And he couldn't fully connect with us if he didn't die like us. And he couldn't heal our dying, decaying bodies unless he became fully like us. And so in a great act of love, he switched places with us. Right at the heart of our faith is something so powerful, so transformative, so seminal that it has changed the shape and imagination of human history that we cannot tell stories now. No movie has a plot that is not a redemption story where something dies and then is resurrected, because Jesus has so captured the imagination of human beings with this great act of love. So we are called as followers of Jesus. If the center of the target is to have a friendship with Jesus, what we are supposed to be doing is to be becoming people who are capable of that kind of love. So we're exploring what is love and why are we so bad at it. Because I have a commitment to ending our service on time, let's speed through this part. Here's a couple things that I think love is. Love is super vulnerable. Sometimes we talk about love as sacrificial, but I think sometimes that makes it seem like a chore or something we do unwillingly or something that leads to resentment. I like framing it as vulnerable a lot better. C.S. Lewis, famous Christian author who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, said this: to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung, possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping your heart intact, you must give it to no one, not even to an animal. Don't even love your dog. Wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries. Protect it with your luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, your heart will change. It will not be broken. It will instead become too hard to break. It will become impenetrable, irredeemable, because to love is to be vulnerable. Jesus showed us this vulnerability by opening his arms wide and taking on the pain of the world into him in his death on the cross. So see, when you love something or somebody, it is always going to feel dangerous and vulnerable and costly. That is the nature of love. People also ask sometimes, is love like a choice or is it a feeling? What is it? It is an integrated thing that requires your entire being. That's why you get confused with this. Is it an act? Is it a choice? It is a feeling. Is it a feeling? We're having that because in the philosophy of what a human being over the last 500 years, there's been an argument going on. Are you more of a mind? Are you more of a heart? Are you more of a body? And I think in the new world, the future church will embrace it's all of those things in equal measure, working together, inseparable. It is all of those. Love is this integrated thing that requires your body, your mind, and your heart. This is why the story of Jesus shows up in the way that it does. It requires his body on the cross. It requires the moment where he chooses it in the Garden of Gethsemane. It is a deep feeling such that Jesus can say to the people crucifying him, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. You and I are called to give our full being to love one another. It is an integrated thing that we do when we love. Love is a high effing standard. See, Jesus taught about love, talked about love. It was the main theme in his work amongst the humans. He has said this: you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor, hate your enemy. Everybody can do that. But I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, send rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors, who in Jesus' day were thought of as the worst people around, aren't even the worst people around loving their neighbors and hating their enemies? If you greet your own people, what are you doing that is any different than any other person has ever done? Be perfect, therefore, as your Father is perfect. The issue of perfection can plague us, right? But here gives a very specific definition. Perfection is only and ever love. We're called to this very high standard. Now, as I think about the election ahead of us, I know that as a cisgendered white dude, I have a lot less at stake in this election than some do. And so I just want to humbly say I have no right at all to ask anybody to love their enemies. The vision I want to cast for us over the next 4 weeks is that we can become people who are so consumed by the loving presence of Jesus that it becomes natural or at least possible to love our enemies. I won't ask you to do it, but I will ask you to become full of Jesus' loving presence. That is my hope for you. So that you say, I shouldn't love my enemy, but I maybe could because Jesus is with me. That's my ask of you. Love is a high standard, and love comes from God. Growing up in church, I felt like I better try really hard at love. Clearly, it's important. I got to muster up all my strength and focus, and through gritted teeth, try to love somebody. But that's not at all how this works. In a couple weeks, we'll take a look at who God is, the God who brought us love. But we'll see that God doesn't love us through gritted teeth as if he couldn't stand your presence. He loves you in an enthusiastic way that he signs up for again and again. He likes you. Love is an amazing thing because the Bible tells us that God is love, as we'll see in a moment. But that means that God invented love. He gave it to us. Love is God's great gift to us. Not just because he loves us, but because he invented it for us to share with each other as we know each other, as we feel seen and deeply in friendship with one another. It's because that's the kind of guy God is. That's what he invented for us. And so we're bad at love because it feels so deeply vulnerable. It's so costly. And as this series develops, we'll see that the way we get better at it is we just ask God for help. God, would you give me more love for these people that I don't like? These family members that I don't like? These people that I would not choose to spend my life with, but here we are. Would you give me more love? As we've thought about this series, we've also thought about the last week of it is right before Thanksgiving. And so each one of us may, maybe not, who may though, see some people that it doesn't come real natural to us to love in the ways we're talking about. And what you can start doing now is to say, God, would you give me more love for those people that I'm going to see one way or another? Or maybe it's not Thanksgiving. Maybe it's a coworker or a neighbor with a certain bumper sticker where you have to say, God, would you teach me? Would you show me how to love this person? Because love comes from God. That's how we get better at it. Or with a child, or with a spouse, or with a parent, we can say, God, would you help me? Now, as we thought about this series as a leadership team, we have mapped out 3 different scenarios of what might happen on Tuesday. Maybe it's a red wave. We got a whole different series planned for that. Maybe, holy smokes, it all works out. We got a different series planned for that. Maybe it's deeply ambiguous and we have to face in human life. We have control over nothing. We have a different series planned out for that. But they are all rooted in love. One of the passages that we think about a lot is Ephesians 17, which says that you could have Christ dwell in your heart through faith and become rooted in love. That's what happens when we ask Jesus to dwell within us. We start to become people anchored, founded upon love. So, I'm going to skip this really long Bible verse right here, and I'm going to pray for you. Jesus, would you bless these people? God, over the next 4 weeks, would you teach us how to so anchor our lives in your presence? To become rooted and founded upon love, so that even when we engage with true enemies, that we could love them somehow. And God, I'm deeply aware that sometimes in a strange way, the enemy is us. Sometimes we are our own enemy. And I'm grateful that even me, you taught me how to love myself. Not because I'm amazing, but somehow because you love me. So even when I'm the enemy, gosh, you call me to empathy and compassion and care and love. Would you pour out your love here, Jesus? Thank you, Lord. Amen.